Hi there, it's Karen at Simply Living for Him. I'm here to do my daily encouragement. We are going to read a scripture today from the Bible in Acts that I thought would be a great encouragement for us today as believers. So if you are encouraged by this video, please like and share it with your friends and encourage them as well. I have a big announcement coming on tomorrow, Friday, April 24th at 3 p.m. We're going to do a Facebook Live, and it is a huge announcement for the future of Simply Living for Him. If you cannot make it live, don't worry, I will be sharing all over my social media after tomorrow. So today I wanted to look at a verse in Acts that has always encouraged me and has always sort of made me think about things and how I am spending my time and in how I am being transformed and how I am sharing Jesus with other people. As I've told you during this time, for me, I have wanted nothing more than to use my little slice of the internet here to point you to Jesus, to sort of give you some hope and peace. I'm not here to give you my opinions. I'm not here to give you any more statistics on what's going on out there, because there's plenty of that out there. I'm here to simply have you maybe grow closer in your walk with the Lord and think about things in a different perspective, and also to point you to Jesus as always. So today I was looking at Acts 4, and I was just like, oh yeah, I've always thought about this, and it applies so much to today as well. In Acts 4, verse 18, in verse 13, it says, now, as they observed the confidence of Peter and John and understood that they were uneducated and untrained men, they were amazed and began to recognize them as having been with Jesus. So let me just back up and tell you where this comes into context. We're here in Acts. Jesus has been crucified. He has died. And now we have the disciples are starting the first church, and we have the spread of Christianity, and we also have a lot of persecution because of what the followers of Jesus are preaching. And so in chapter 4, Peter and John are arrested, and they are put in jail, and they have been answering questions about why they are doing what they are doing. And it was odd because, the priests and the Sadducees are questioning them, and here they are not, as it says, they are unschooled and untrained. They could have had all of the letters after their names. They could have had all the theology degrees. They could have had all the qualifications by worldly standards, but they had none of that. What they saw in them, it says, is that they began to recognize they had been with Jesus. So all of the training, all of the theology, all of the formalness really meant nothing at that moment, because their belief and their firm belief to the fact that, they're getting persecuted and they're not stopping them at all, really shows the power of God and the power of Jesus, and how when people see that in us, that means more than anything. They're not going to be won to Christ by our arguments or our theology or our, disputes or our degree in theology. They are going to only be able to recognize the truth of Jesus, which goes above all of those qualifications. And so I always think about this verse where it says they recognized that they had been with Jesus. They recognized something in them that was far beyond any earthly qualifications for why they were doing what they were doing and for their beliefs. And it's the same for us. People will recognize when we have been with Jesus. When I speak at homeschooling conventions, I often speak to homeschooling families, and I say, your kids will recognize the days that you've been with Jesus and the days you haven't. And what I mean by that is when I am in my word in the morning, and when I am constantly filling my mind with his truth throughout the day, I handle things so much differently because I'm filled up with the Spirit and I'm operating out of that place. I'm not operating out of my flesh. I'm not operating according to the standards of the world. I'm operating out of the fact that I've been with Jesus, and the fruits of the Spirit are evident And remembering that those transformations and those fruits of the Spirit, those things are a supernatural effect, right? We don't make ourselves. I mean, we can try all we want to make ourselves a certain way, but that's outward behavior. When it's an inward behavior, and it truly flows out of us, that is when people will recognize that we've been with Jesus. And so when we're in our word and we're praying and we're focusing on him and his will, and we're not getting caught up in all of the stuff, that's when people will see something in us that is different. I've talked about it, in these videos before and on the podcast, but the girl that introduced me to Jesus, she didn't come at me with her theology. She didn't come at me with her opinions. I just recognized something in her that was different. And looking back now, I know it's what it says in here. I recognized she had been with Jesus. When you are with Jesus, he transforms you. I talked about it this morning on my Facebook page, and I'm going to podcast about it today, and you'll hear that podcast this week. There's something happened during this whole time with being home, and for me, normally I'm a worrier and I'm anxious, especially about things of health or money. And so of course during this time, when that whole those fears are amplified in this world, health and money right now, because of job losses and obviously the virus, that would be such a time for those fears in me to come out. And I can't even explain it to you, except that those fears are completely gone. I haven't had any fears during this time. And that is not to say that I did that. That is to say that that is a miraculous power of God transforming me from the inside out. When we are with Jesus, he does a work in us, in our soul, in our spirit. It says here, the word is alive and active and powerful and transforming. It says in Romans 12:2 that you will transform your mind by his word, by his truth. You renew your mind, you are transformed. And so those things happen because we are with Jesus and we are surrendered to his will and not our wants, and we are content in our circumstances. Even if we are in bad circumstances, we can still change how we handle those circumstances. So, the flesh focuses on the outward of everything. The flesh focuses on, oh my goodness, the economy. Oh my goodness, the virus. Oh my goodness, we're home. Oh my goodness, all of these things. But the spirit focuses on the things of God. And what is God doing in me through this? How do I get closer to God in this? How do I reach others through this? And so when we are operating in the spirit, when people will recognize we've been with Jesus, they're recognizing us operating out of that spirit. The fruits of the spirit are evident. It is not something we do in ourselves. So the more time we spend with him, the more people are going to recognize who we are spending our time with. And if we are spending time with Jesus, the world is going to see that. My kids know when I'm spending too much time on the internet, or when I'm spending my time in the Word, when I'm spending too much time listening to what others say, or when I'm spending time listening to what God says. And it's the same for all of us. It says we become like those who we spend our time with. Who are you spending your time with today? Are you spending your time with Jesus? Are you spending your time, with everybody else on the internet? Are you spending your time even sometimes in your own thoughts? Because you can get in your own head and people will recognize you when you're, caught up in your own stuff. But we want them to recognize we've been with Jesus, because ultimately our goal here on earth is to share Jesus with everybody. So I don't want them to recognize me, Karen Debuse, in my flesh. That is an ugly, ugly thing. But when I have been with Jesus, they will recognize his light, his love, his life coming out from me. So today, look at where you're spending your time and let people see that you've been with Jesus.